All right, breaking news here on the Law&Crime Network. The state attorney of Florida is about to give a statement in Robert Kraft. Let's go to Florida in that press conference right now.
Thank you all for being here. I'm sorry if we're a few minutes late. My name is Dave Aronberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. The last name is spelled Aronberg. I'm joined today by Chief Assistant State Attorney Alan Johnson, and also, importantly, two of my prosecutors who are part of the intake team, the intake unit, who were involved with the charges today, and that is Elizabeth Neto and Judy Arco, along with PIO Mike Edmondson and Latasha Lowgood. On Friday, February 22nd, the Jupiter Police Department gave us case filing packets stemming from their prostitution sting. After review by our intake prosecutors, we are charging 25 individuals with soliciting another to commit prostitution, pursuant to sections 796.07, 2F, and 5A1 of the Florida statutes. This charge is a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail, a mandatory $5,000 fine, 100 hours of community service, and a class on the dangers of prostitution and human trafficking. We also expect to receive filing packets for the two women who have been arrested by the Jupiter Police Department for, among other things, deriving support from the proceeds of prostitution, which is a second-degree felony. All defendants are presumed innocent at this point. The charges begin the court process with local defendants being mailed a summons to appear in court. Out-of-county defendants will have a capias issued, which is essentially a low-level warrant, and will have to either surrender or have an attorney contact law enforcement to satisfy the warrant. The clerk's office will publicly release court dates for those receiving a summons, and the names of all the defendants will be released. And actually, they have been released already. The names of all defendants already have been released by the Jupiter Police Department. I'd like to thank the men and women of the Jupiter Police Department for their professionalism and diligence in investigating these cases. It's our ongoing partnership with local law enforcement that helps keep our community safe. You can tell a lot about our community by the way it treats its most vulnerable individuals, and that includes victims of human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is the business of stealing someone's freedom for profit, including, it can happen anywhere, including in the peaceful community of Jupiter, Florida. In 2017, our office joined with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the FBI to help start a human trafficking task force. We are pleased with our progress, but we realize there's a lot more to do. These cases aren't about any one defendant or any group of defendants. The larger picture, which we must all confront, is the cold reality that many prostitutes in cases like this are themselves victims, often lured into this country with promises of a better life, only to be forced to live and work in a sweatshop or a brothel, performing sex acts for strangers. Human trafficking is built on force, fraud, or coercion. It is evil in our midst. It is also fueled by the demand side, demands from otherwise law-abiding citizens who are not aware or don't want to be aware about those being exploited. Human trafficking often occurs in plain sight, which is why I'm hopeful that these cases will encourage people to say something if they see something, and for victims of this unreported crime to gain the courage to let their voices be heard. With that, I'd like to take any questions you may have.
Please identify yourself.
Yes. No, if they are local residents, meaning if they live in Palm Beach County, they will receive a summons in the mail. It's like a ticket, a notice to appear in court. And that court date is can be found through the clerk's office. If they are from out of the county, then they're subject to a capias, which is in effect a low-level warrant. And that one, they would either have to surrender to the authorities, or they could have an attorney reach out and satisfy the warrant. There is no requirement.
Is there any kind of evidence or anything to say that any of these people, any of the 25 who were arrested, knew that this was a human trafficking situation?
Well, the matters are still being investigated, and I don't want to get too much into the details of the case because this is a pending matter. But I can say this, that so far there have been no charges of human trafficking in any of these cases, but that could change in the future depending on what the investigators find.
Ayala Charles, CBS 12.
Some of the investigations are months long, they last a while, and
Correct.
one of these cases is close to a year. For monitoring these situations, we not only want to get this right in terms of authorities and everyone involved, but at the same time that women who are victims, obviously will, doing this for months and as we're monitoring the situation. So how do you kind of find the compromise between monitoring and making sure you're getting everything right in terms of what you want to charge, but also knowing that these women are suffering every day and every month?
Right. Those are questions for the investigators, the police. The Jupiter Police engaged in a multi-month investigation, and then they turned over the filing packets to our office for prosecution. I think the question you have would be more geared towards the investigators, but they're very professional, and I think they did an outstanding job. So, it's always a balance, as you say, between letting the conduct continue to gain enough evidence to file charges and stepping in and stopping it. But that is really a question for the investigators. Yes, sir.
First, two questions. Where are the women who are working in the
Right.
brothel? And also, do you think state law is sufficient right now to deal with this situation?
I was a state senator when we tightened the laws against human trafficking. Florida law is very strong against human trafficking. It is a first-degree felony for most cases of adult human trafficking. When it comes to child human trafficking, it is a life felony. And if there's force involved, some violence involved, then an adult human trafficking would become a potential life felony. So our punishments are severe, but there's a high burden of proof. You need to reach that burden of proof, and that's always a question in these cases, which is why these investigations can take some time. But one thing will mention about Florida law is that Florida law is also very progressive. If victims of human trafficking will speak up, they are eligible to have their records expunged, including arrests for prostitution. But they need to speak up. At the federal level, human trafficking victims are eligible for a T visa, which is a visa that can allow them to stay in the country, and it's only reserved for victims of human trafficking. So the key is to get the victims to speak up. Well, the women now, I know that the investigators have been talking with them, and you'd have to go get details from those agencies such as the Jupiter Police Department.
Florida has a new law that protects victims of crime having their information revealed. Is there any way that the Johns here are considered victims?
No. Marcy's law does not protect defendants. Marcy's law protects victims of crime.
Daniel Walk from CBS 12. These documents you just handed out would put Robert Kraft in the parlor on the morning of the AFC Championship game. Is that correct? He was in Jupiter, Florida that morning?
Well, the documents speak for themselves. Well, we handed out with the capias themselves, and I know that we don't always give out those documents, but because the Jupiter Police Department identified the names in advance, and you all had the names for some time, we decided to, in the interest of transparency, to let you have those documents, but they speak for themselves.
Ayala Charles, influence and money and power connections. Is there any reason to believe that Robert Kraft will be treated any differently than these other 24 men?
And I can assure you that our office treats everyone the same, whether you have a lot of money or you are indigent. We treat all defendants the same, and no one gets any special justice in Palm Beach County.
Ayala Charles, CBS 12 News. Do you expect more arrests to come from other similar businesses within Palm Beach County?
Well, it's hard to say because the investigators are the Jupiter Police, and then you have the Martin County Sheriff's Department, you have Vero Beach. This is a multi-county effort, and so it's hard to say if there are more arrests based on their investigations. But I was asked earlier today about rumors about bigger fish, and I said that would be news to me. And I also added that, it's hard for me to talk about rumors, especially false ones. No, there are two cases there. There are 2 counts. Correct. Right. Well, all the cases are being charged as first-degree misdemeanors under the tougher Florida statute, and one reason why that decision was made was because that statute has a mandatory 100 hours of community service, a mandatory $5,000 fine, and a mandatory class on the dangers of prostitution and human trafficking, not to mention a potential for an increased jail sentence from 60 days to a year.
Robert Kraft owns multiple homes here and up in Massachusetts and California. Would he be given a habeas or a summons? How would you deal with it?
There was a question whether or not Mr. Kraft lived here in Palm Beach County, and I believe we decided it was a summons, so he does have a residence there, so he'd be receiving a summons. Okay. The question is mugshots. When you get a summons in the mail, generally you do not get a mugshot. Now remember, that's up to the police department. It's not up to us. It's up to the local law enforcement agency. Has he already been sent that summons?
His attorney has been provided the summons.
His attorney has been provided the summons. Okay. I think that law enforcement has done an excellent job. They've been very professional and very thorough. And also, they've helped steer the conversation away from any one particular defendant, from any group of defendants, towards the evil of human trafficking. It's about time the country has a real conversation about human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery in our midst. This is not about lonely old men or victimless crimes. This is about enabling a network of criminals to traffic women into our country for forced labor and sex.
How did you come up with these 25 people charged? Was there a lot more by something?
Well, those are the ones charged by the Jupiter Police Department. My jurisdiction is only for Palm Beach County. And by the way, when I talk about human trafficking, I'm talking about the general subject of human trafficking, the larger picture. There is no allegation that any of the defendants were involved with human trafficking. They are not being charged as such. But instead of talking about a particular defendant, I'd like to make the conversation broader, because this country needs to have a reality check on what's going on out there when it comes to forced labor and forced sexual conduct.
When did you first hear about the investigation?
Well, our prosecutors have been involved in this for some time. It's hard to pinpoint when. I've been aware of it for a while.
And what did you think when you first heard that this was happening in Florida?
I've been involved in fighting human trafficking for a while, so nothing surprises me. I give a lot of speeches on it. I'm on the Attorney General's statewide task force for human trafficking. So when this came across my desk, I was not surprised. I'm not surprised about the defendants. Defendants in these matters come from every socioeconomic group, and it's just the reality of the times we live in.
What do you think needs to be done on the supply side of this business in order to stop the problem of human trafficking?
It's a good question. What should be done on the supply side to stop human trafficking? Well, the laws are in place, but I think we need to do better about encouraging victims to speak up, because victims don't know that there are services available to them. They don't know that they could get their criminal records expunged or obtain a special visa to remain in this country. So if we would treat victims in this matter as victims and not as criminals, I think that you would gain the trust of more individuals to speak up on these matters. Because right now, a lot of them come from countries where the police are not their friends. And so they need to know that we're here to help them and treat them as the victims that they are. Terry?
All right, so that's State Attorney Dave Aronberg, who's giving an update on the arrest of Robert Kraft. And still with me, Ashley Wilcott and Anthony Hall. Anthony, I want to talk to you first. We were looking at memes while he was talking. We can laugh about it, but it's no laughing matter, because there is a bigger picture here. This sex trafficking thing is huge. And I suspect that these women here in Jupiter, Florida, and across this country or forced into this line of work. And he said it. A lot of them come here for promises of an opportunity in America, but the opportunity they get is not one that anybody should have to go through.
Absolutely. This is probably the closest thing we have to modern day slavery in America right now. You're talking some of these sex workers are as young as 10 years old,
right?
You know, maybe even younger. I don't think the state attorney has been as genuine as possible when he says if it wasn't for Bob Kraft. I think Bob Kraft may be a light that he's able to shine a light to this, so now we can take it as serious as it is, because it's a horrible crime, and what's going on now needs some light on it.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Now, Ashley, I know you've actually worked these kind of cases, and I was just handed part of the arrest report here, or I guess the summons, as we later learned. And obviously, Kraft was caught on business. He entered a room. He was escorted by one of the individuals, and it says he immediately took off all his clothes as soon as he walked in the room and hugged this individual. And to Anthony's point, if this wasn't for Robert Kraft, I don't think we would have heard about the other 24 individuals, because he said there were 25 arrested, the other 24 individuals, or the fact that this state attorney is really working on sex crimes, because before that, no one ever thought of Jupiter, Florida as being a place for sex trafficking.
Well, I do think it's going to shine the spotlight, and I agree, because this is someone famous and that can easily get media attention. That's going to be utilized to shine the light. But I am going to suggest this, and I worked on it for 3 years in the state of Georgia, the sex trafficking protocol, investigations, task force, all of these things now are becoming more more common, because we recognize that this is going on all over the nation. As a result, stings are not unusual, right? These task force are not unusual. It just so happens when there's someone famous, it gets the media's attention.
Absolutely. And you and I both fly out of Atlanta, Hartsville all the time, and we always hear that recording. If you see something, say something. Human trafficking is illegal. So that just tells you how big it is. And again, Robert Kraft, the owner of New England Patriots, was arrested for solicitation of prostitution down in Florida. That was the state attorney of Florida giving a presser on that. We're going to take a quick break and get back to our live trials on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.